This board has been disturbed. There's a bit of a discrepancy between the height. This is not attached to this. Right, we've been asked to come and patch up around these doors. So we've got an interesting little bit because it's not just a standard patch up. There's a bit of a discrepancy between the height. This needs building down to about here, which is about 4.5, 5 inches maybe. Okay, first thing I want to do is, this is not attached to this, this is new. So I could squeeze adhesive up behind there, but it'd be sagging out and stuff, so I'm just going to fill this with foam quickly. I used to be really against using foam, and in my book, everything had to be done with plaster. But in different applications, the more I use it, the more I see its versatility and great benefits in different situations. And also, this board has been disturbed a little bit. Again, we could do it with adhesive, but this is just so much easier to use. So if it was undisturbed, this wall would have been fine. But with all the knocking about, the dabs have delaminated, they've come away from the wall. Our Thermalite block are prone for this. And it just so happens that the foam sticks it really well and dries quite fast. There we go. It would have been nice if they just brought that down the same level. I mean, if you just put it in on top of this brick here, it probably would have worked. But then they had to pack the back of it up. So I know why they didn't do it, because to pack the back of that lintel, I mean, they could have done it from here. But anyway, they've done what's probably easiest for them, which just means I've got to build it down. So my plan is, I'm going to use a piece of timber that we've just cut down to make it a similar level. Probably a piece of timber, a plasterboard as a packer, and then the next plasterboard will run straight through. But I've got to fix this to the bottom of this metal lintel. So, because I'm a plasterer, I don't carry metal bits and stuff, but I have got a way that I think is going to work. I've got drywall screws that are designed to go into metal with a self-drilling end. So I'm going to use the drywall screws to make a little perforation in that, and then I can drive long screws through this and into the little, well, you'll see how it works. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it works. I do a lot of subcontract work for a window fitting firm, so they have me do these little jobs all the time. Now, I don't look at these jobs beforehand. I know roughly what's entailed, and I turn up and just make the job happen in one day. Now, because I didn't see this previously, I didn't know what I was going to have to do to get over that lintel. Otherwise, I would have bought a metal bit for drilling into the metal. So instead, what I'm going to do now is send screws through the timber where I want them. I'm going to use the screws as they go through to mark off onto the metal exactly where I want the holes to be. And then I'm going to use a different screw to drill into the metal. I'm going to use a drywall screw that is designed for self-drilling into metal. And that way then, I can send these screws right the way through and fix that piece of timber to the bottom of the metal lintel. Okay, so we've got the screws all just poking into the little pilot hole I made, and then just to help it really stick. I mean, the screws will be good enough, but put a little bit of this in here as well, just to help it. So this would have been just as easy for the builder to pack this timber on the top and put the lintel at the right height, and it would have saved all this, but this is what happens. Absolutely rock solid. It worked. Okay, so we are still a little bit off, but now I can just pack this down with plasterboard. I could have packed the whole thing down with plasterboard and not bothered using the timber, but it would have been difficult to do it all in one day. Chances are it'll drop off with the weight. I've measured all the head and the reveals and the little strips that I need. I'm going to cut them all in one go. What you find is it's nice to just keep working on a nice bound edge because you rub your finger down it. If I cut one at a time, the next one I'm going to rub my finger on a rough edge. I mean, I'm not worried about my little finger, but it's just nice if you can cut all your strips in one go. Little tip for you, when you cut the back of the board, start a little bit in, start about here, and then that end of the board isn't flopping round, you'll show the other end. Like that, and then you can just snap it off like that. Now you'll probably notice if you watch enough of my videos that my working life consists of basically fixing one problem after the next. But this is also true of life. There's probably not a single person walking this earth at the minute that isn't struggling with something or just got over an issue and there's a new one to replace it straight away. That's why I'd like to just take a quick moment to introduce you to the paid partner of today's video, BetterHelp. BetterHelp gives you access to trained therapists, mental health professionals who can assist you in your personal growth. Now, you can swap and change between these therapists, so you know you're going to be able to find somebody that clicks with you, that you find easy to talk to. Now, when you think of therapy, I want you to think of it as a tool to help you develop healthy habits, to help you understand yourself and what you're feeling, a tool to help you cope with problems or learn how to solve them. And when you use therapy as a tool in this way, it's going to lead to improved mental and emotional well-being. BetterHelp are on a mission to make starting therapy easier for everyone. So, whatever you're struggling with right now, if you think therapy can help, then click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/onthetrowel and get yourself 10% off your first month of therapy. Now, let's get this job finished.
What I'm doing is, there's nothing to fix it in the back, so I'm purposely leaving a little gap.
Now, because we've only got the front to fix to and the back potentially will be flapping, now I've left this little gap on purpose so I can just get a little bit of foam in that gap, and once that sets, it joins the plasterboard. Once that sets, it'll join the plasterboard to that front side. There we go. Okay, well, any overspill of the foam, we can cut it off once it's completely set, but now it's nice and firm, it's got a skin on it, so whilst it's at that point, so you've got clearance to the plasterboard, it's easy just to tuck that up inside before it's set, so it's out of the way. Just saves you having to cut it and make a mess, you know. Just be careful you don't pierce through the skin though, because if you put your finger into the middle of the foam, it's quite sticky. Now, Leighton's mixing adhesive, so whilst he's getting on with that, I'm going to seal the walls. The sooner this sealer goes on, the better, because it's got a chance to dry. Right, this foam at the back has basically nearly gone off now, but it doesn't matter. There's not much movement in it anyway. It will just hold it solid. Now, when you're putting window heads up and door heads up, you don't need to prop them, okay? The suction of the wet material will hold the head up. It's a bit like when you're a kid and you go to the toilets in school and you get wet the tissue and you throw it and it sticks to the ceiling. It works the same way, so you don't need to put supports under it or nothing, but you can't have it too thick and too big because it will drop off. It's hard. You just get the right feel for what will and what won't hold, and you'll know when you stick it up that it'll just go and stay up, you know. Just like that. You'll see. Watch. That's it. Done. It won't move. And then we just check it for level and tap it into place. Take the factory square of the board and just check it's square that way. Square that way, that's fine. Now, we set the reveal on here. You always want to put them on a packer first. You don't want anything just sat on the ground. A couple of reasons. One, you can transfer moisture up if anyone wants to spill water on the ground or anything like that. You know, if there was any presence of moisture. The second thing, it's easy to adjust the board, and also when you're sticking it to the wall, if it's resting on a packer, it will slide in easy. If it's sat on the floor and there's all rocks and crumbs and stuff on the floor, that can stop the board pushing back and the bottoms can be kicking out. It's not so important on a little reveal, but when you're doing full walls, that'll make all the difference to you. So there's my little packer down there. I've got two. That'll go in there. And obviously you want to measure off that, get the right height. Okay, so this reveal's already set. This is the one we're working up to. So what you want to do is measure the reveal. Now I can see there's a little line there where the frame's got a little add-on piece. So what we want to do is make this side equal. So there's also a little add-on piece on this side. So all I need to do is just make sure a little bit of that line is showing so it matches, and then that way the margins are the same. Nothing worse than having a window with one big margin once, or doors, one big margin, and then one little tiny one here. So we'll work back to that. Now, one thing we can't do is put drywall adhesive on this brickwork here because it'll bring moisture through, penetrating moisture. So I'm not going to let the plasterboard touch this brickwork. The plasterboard's going to be slightly off it, but foam will be okay. So we're going to foam the plasterboard on that side, be stuck with adhesive on this side. And the first thing you want to focus on is getting the bottom of the board in. The top is easy to adjust. You want the bottom in first because that's the bit where all the weight is on the packer. There we go. Let's just check it for level now. That's actually level where it is. Again, hold on please mate. Check it for square. 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 And we can just about see the little line where, come here, look, see? The little line is showing, so we know it's the same size as the other one, because that's just got a little bit of the line showing there, so margins are the same. Okay, so now I'm going to stick the last piece of plasterboard in. The adhesive will go through the little holes on the lintel and that will grab, but unfortunately it doesn't stick very well to wood, so I'm going to use the adhesive as a packer. Once this is in place, I'm then going to put some screws in it to make sure that it never pops off in the future. Now, there's a few little gaps that we're going to fill. We've got here, the makeup between these two boards, and a little bit up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this with drywall adhesive, that with drywall adhesive. The only thing we're doing with drywall adhesive, we've got to wait for it to set, which is going to take a little while. But because it's only little bits, when we put scrim over it, we will be able to skim over it when it's still a little bit wet. This is going to be a bit of a pain because we need a good solid corner to sit the bead on, so that's going to take a little while. But again, we can sit the bead into it whilst it's wet. This is the only bit where we're not going to fill with adhesive here because there's a little bit when it goes into the cavity. So because of the size of it, we'll just fill that with foam there and cut it back and scrim it up. Yeah, look at that. Have you seen? There's another little tip for you. When you work in someone's home, don't let the animals escape. They don't like it. Just making sure I'm pushing it in behind. It's not just sit on the surface. There's actually adhesive getting squidged back behind the board. Okay, then I'm going to form this corner nicely. So we've got somewhere for the bead to sit. When you're forming a corner freehand with wet plaster, you always want to work away from the angle. Like that, see how I'm pushing away from the corner? If I was to come the other way with the trowel and pull towards the corner, you would pull the wet plaster out of the corner instead, because it would stick to your trowel and come away from the corner. So you always want to work away from the angle. There we go. Now we'll scrim all this up, bead up, let it set, and then we can skim it. Now the adhesive's still wet, so I can't get a solid fixing it into the head. So what I'm actually doing is I'm nailing into the core of the plasterboard on the bottom. I'm putting the nail so it's actually going into the centre of the plasterboard just to hold it still. And this part's a little bit different because this is a wet angle that we've just formed. So instead of trying to get nails in, instead I'm just sitting the bead onto the wet adhesive and slightly pressing it in. I'm basically using the adhesive to dab the plasterboard in, and I'm just going to put a little nail at the top just to pin it still so that the corners meet up on the angle beads. And now, where the adhesive has squeezed through the little holes in the beads, I'm just going to smooth that back in, just so it's not in the way for when I come to skim it.
Yeah, this foam's still soft, so I've just used my trowel to get that flattened in there, because it's still a bit squidgy. Now, that's going to set. That's going to set, and whilst that's going off, we're going to go and get some lunch. So when we come back, we can put a bit of scrim on there and skim. Hopefully by then, this will go a bit more firm as well, and it won't cause us any issues. So we'll get some dinner. Okay, come here, Sam. Come. Look, foam, that's set. We've scrimmed that section up. The adhesive, that's firmed up. It's not set, but it's firm enough to plaster over. Different types of adhesive, drywall adhesive, work differently. British gypsum adhesive will stay wet and then all of a sudden flash set, whereas this will flash set, but it does firm up first. I think, what brand was this, Knauf? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's firm enough to skim over, that's the main thing. Oh, what's that? Look at that! Where's that come from?
What's that?
It's a big, massive
Boulder.
rock in the mix. You do get them from time to time.
When you're filling out to beads, always make sure you go both ways with the trowel to make sure that you're not curving the wall. You don't want that bit like a letter C. So I'm going across, and then any hollow sections I'll fill in.
Right from the beginning, when you're laying the plaster on with the first coat, start blending in. Don't leave big ridges and think, oh, I'll blend that in later. Do it right from the get-go. So for instance, like here now, straight away, I'm going to feather that part of the plaster in, ready to blend.
Now don't worry about the pink sealer, that paints over no problem. Another thing you might have noticed is that we haven't plastered all the way up to the adjoining walls. One reason is because the wallpaper is staying on and the customer doesn't want to replace it. It's bad practice to plaster wallpaper in.
There we go. That's the first coat on. And now, Leighton, I could do it myself, but what's the point in having Leighton? Leighton's going to wet this stuff up a little bit and we'll second coat this. And that'll be it. We'll start troweling up, get this show on the road. Oh, there's another little rock in there. So sometimes a bag can get damp or a part of the bag get wet and you get little rocks in your plaster. If you spot a big rock when you're mixing, get it out quick rather than hitting it with a whisk and turning it into lots of little rocks, you know. So sometimes you will get little hard lumps, absolute pain in the backside. They can get wet at the builders merchants, they can get wet in transit, sometimes they can get wet in the back of the van. I mean, I'd usually just blame Leighton because he has to blame for everything, but who knows? It could have been me. I doubt it, but it could have been.
Now, a lot of plasterers don't like wetting up the first coat and using it for the second coat. What it actually does is makes the plaster set fast, but it's okay for little jobs like this. I don't mind doing it. Just note as well, it's worth taking your time and getting the angles perfect. My dad always used to say to me, anyone can make a wall smooth in the middle. You judge a plasterer by the quality of his angles.
when we put this bead on up here, we didn't nail too much because the adhesive was still wet. So now the bead has got a little bit of movement in it. So when you keep pulling away from it, you're basically knocking the bead off. So every now and then, I just give it a little press like that, and you'll see all the finishes ooze through the little holes, and it just grabs it tighter. You're basically bedding the bead on as you go this way, you know. And it's all because we just don't want to sit around and wait for the adhesive to set just for a little job, you know. If you were doing a full house of dry lining, then by the time you've got to the bottom, you could nail into a good solid fixing at the top. But this way we just try and get it done quickly, you know.
If you've enjoyed this video so far, please hit the like button. It really helps my channel.
Right, I think now it's ready for the first trial. So we have got accelerator in this, so it'll set a little bit quicker. Now, when I blend it in and start wetting the angle on that, you shouldn't really need water on the rest of the plaster, but on the blend you will. So we start helping that blend straight in.
Always work across your blend if you can. Never work with it, because what you don't want to do is cause a bump or a ridge where the old plaster meets the new. If you work across it, you'll feather it in nicely. Pay a lot of attention to where you're blending in. It's not the easiest thing to get a seamless blend, and if you don't do it right, you will see it when it's painted. But with plenty of practice and plenty of water, you'll get it spot on. Keep your tools clean whilst you're plastering. It's inevitable that you'll get wet plaster on the back of the trowel, and just wash it off as it happens. You can't leave a nice job with dirty tools. Now, it is inevitable that after a couple of months, you're going to start getting a little bit of a build-up on the back of the trowel. Almost like, it's very similar to how you'll get tea stains inside a teacup that's used very often. Some fellas soak the trowel overnight to remove that, but it's not really necessary. It won't make too much difference to the finish. But what will make a difference if you've got clumps of wet plaster on the back of your trowel. When you're tightening the angles in with the angle brush, you want the plaster to be set enough that the brush isn't leaving brush lines in it. If you're putting brush marks in the plaster's still too wet. You need to wait until further on down the line. When you're patching, because you have to use a lot of water on the blend, it's inevitable that you're going to get a little bit of water staining on the wall. Now ultimately this doesn't make a massive difference, but if you clean it off, it just makes your work look a lot neater. And that goes for door frames as well. Just spend your time, go round. Just before the plaster's gone completely dark, it's quite easy to clean off. You can just go around, make sure everything's nice, clean, neat, wiped down. At the end of the day, if the job looks nice and clean, it's a nice job.
Right, just need a quick polish. About 5 minutes and we're done. There we go. Quick polish. Done. Right, we'll see you on the next one.
Hey, thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend it with me.